Number 2, Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Thanks for tuning to it. Hope you're having a great day. Hope this Bobby Bonilla Day is treating you as well as it's treating me. Good article. I should point to it because there is a lot of confusion, and I get it because there's a lot to learn, a lot to know. And there's also a lot to figure out still that they still don't even know regarding NIL. Name, image, likeness on this, the day that student athletes begin to have the opportunity to profit off their name, image, and likeness. Ira Schoffel of warchant.com produced a piece that seeks to help give us a better understanding of what all is happening and how it will work and what activities are permissible. And he was able to sit down with FSU Senior Associate Athletic Director Jim Curry to get a clearer picture. They brought up how can student athletes profit from NIL in Florida. And, most notably, they can't take payments from universities either during recruiting or when they're already at the school. So there's no pay for play. There's none of that. They can make money for public appearances. And already today, I saw at a local restaurant, McKinsey Milton and others are there as a paid appearance. So they get an opportunity. That's great. They can endorse products. They can run their own businesses. Well, that's great. Cam McDonald released a clothing line right off the bat. I mean, that's pretty cool. They can take part in just about any type of legal business venture. And, this was always something that we said seems reasonable. Universities are not allowed to facilitate any of those arrangements, though. So, like a school can't reach out to a restaurant and say, hey, we got a guy that we think, you should help out here. They're not allowed to do that. So clients have to reach out to the student athletes or their representatives. So it's a student-led initiative. And the university is told about it by the student athlete. So if they reach a deal with a client and what that relationship entails, they go to the university. They go presumably to the athletic department. From there, the athletic department representative goes to the university and says, okay, so-and-so has reached an agreement to do weekly appearances on Thursday nights at such and such restaurant, and we approve of it. We think it's fine, and here's what that deal entails. They're going to get $100 per appearance, and they're going to have, free food or whatever it might be, right? And I think it's important that the schools educate the players and educate themselves in order to take part in the process and make sure that they're adhering to the law in the state of Florida or wherever it is they are, because that's all stuff that could get murky. Florida State, any other school for that matter, forbidden from compensating student athletes, okay? So they can't do it. Ira points out in the piece on warchant.com that several businesses and individuals have reached out to FSU to propose NIL deals to student athletes. And in each case, the university has explained, we can't get involved in this. You've got to reach out to them specifically. You've got to reach out to them and their representatives to work out a deal. We cannot be the one that fosters this deal. And look, we go back to almost a year ago. We were talking about Florida State working on a plan to develop an NIL task force. And they did it with coaches and administrators and academic staff, and they got things together. Remember, they launched the new Apex initiative. You read about that earlier this year. Florida State is offering classes as to how to profit from your name, image, and likeness. That's very, very important. They have a third-party company that they work with that provide tools for the athletes that teach them how to build brands, that kind of stuff as well. So this is good. Like the more you educate isn't it always that? Isn't it always that we just get back, rather than operating under fear and ignorance, that if you just educate yourself and educate the people involved in the process, educate the administrators, the players, the representatives, the coaches, anybody associated and affiliated, in this case with Florida State Athletics, the better off everybody is, and we don't get paranoid about what could or could not be and how the world is going to end now that athletes can benefit from their name, image, and likeness. look, a lot of guys, it's a time investment. So you have to know whether or not you have the ability as a player to create a revenue opportunity, a revenue stream of some sort. Are you marketable enough to do it? You can, unless it falls in your lap, remember, you're going to have to engineer this. You're going to have to be business-minded. And there are people who are, just as there are in every other walk of life, people who figure out ways to monetize something that they do well, something that they're passionate about, they like and engaged, they're already engaged in and doing. Maybe it's a hobby, whatever it might be. They can, my youngest son actually has a friend. He's 11 years old, has a friend who figured out how to start a business online using Facebook marketing or whatever it's called. Isn't that amazing? He's 11 years old, and they make good money. He and his father, and the kid figured this out, and it's really cool. I love that. That's great. So some people are business-minded, and they'll figure out a way to cash in on this, or they're more high-profile because they're the starting quarterback or the starting running back at a big-time school. We know Mackenzie Milton has opportunities already. It will be interesting. Coaches will have to get involved in the sense that obviously you're there to go to school and to play football, and how much time do you have to focus on those outside endeavors while also doing all of the things requisite you as a student athlete just to meet the standard of the scholarship and of the school standards and what they expect of you. And we do know this too. It's a work in progress. And I'm reading from a quote here and go back to something we talked about here at the outset. Again, Ira was speaking with Jim Curry, who's the Associate Athletics Director at Florida State. And I think this quote is true, and it's really applicable across the board. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen right now in terms of if there are violations or how this works. But, they have guidelines. There are laws, state laws. Quote, we are still shaping this, trying to get a better understanding of it, and that's around the state, not just here. We're all figuring it out at the same time. Administrators and coaches and student athletes and prospects, we're trying to figure this all out at the same time, and they will. They always have. Every time there have been drastic changes within the game, within the NCAA, at member institutions, there have been a lot of changes. Go back to 1984. There's a landmark case you can read about. It changed the way and paved the way for universities to make gobs of money off of playing football and, licensing to networks and all this other stuff. But when you do that, there are bumps in the road. There are problems. There are complications. It doesn't always have to mean, though, that it's going to ruin the game. If you really want to go back to the game changing forevermore, the ship sailed long ago. I had a buddy who used to tell me, if you love the beauty and the integrity of the student athlete, of the NCAA and athletics the way you dream it to be and never really was, then go watch Ivy League football, buddy. Go watch Ivy League football from 1980. And you'll be able to fulfill your dream, because the rest of this this has changed forever a long time ago. And had everything to do with money. Everything does, always. It doesn't change just because it's your passion, your love of college and college sports. Man, that ship sailed ages ago. Will be interesting to follow, though. Will be very interesting to monitor. And changes will happen fast and furious. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Can I play with madness? Holy Jesus.
They caught that spectator that I mentioned from the Tour de France, and they did also what I expected, which is to back down. You know what happened. They found her, they arrested her, which is all I wanted. I wanted them to, I don't know about arresting, but you know what happened. So this woman, oblivious to what she was about to do in terms of creating a 100 bike pileup at the Tour de France and shattering the dreams of 3 or 4 of the riders in their quest to win a Tour de France. She felt like an idiot. She felt ashamed, humiliated, embarrassed, awful, if she's any kind of a decent human being. Now, unfortunately, we can't jail people for stupidity because, good Lord, there'd be a lot of incarcerated people in a country that already incarcerates people at an alarming rate. But I did want there to be some recourse. I did want there to be a situation where, you would have to feel the shame and the gravity, the gravity of the moment, right? The gravitas. Like, what have I done? And I am being hunted like a criminal for my stupidity. And they did. And that happened. And they got her. They caught her and they arrested her. And that's enough for me. That's enough for me because the fear, the brief isolation, the sit down with the cops as they interrogate you over this, that's enough for me because that probably caused the requisite consternation and stress to I think, serve as proper punishment for her stupidity. I also knew, that's not a good look for France or the Tour de France. And, what are you going to send her to jail? Come on, honestly? What are you going to do? You're going to fine her thousands and thousands of dollars? No, you're not going to do that. And they didn't. Ultimately, they decided to drop those charges. Probably, partly because I don't know that they could convict her, and B, somebody with sense, common sense, pulled him aside and said, really, guys? Pierre, you're going to have to let this go. You're going to have to let this go. Hey, we gave her the tisk. We gave her the finger wag. We even called her dumb at your behest. Okay, we did all of those things. But that's where it ends. Let's let it go. And that is where it ends. And they did let it go. And I wanted to give you that update. Oh, as an aside, do you know, Matthew? One has nothing to do with the other, but it got me thinking because one of these things happened in Europe and the other one happened, I think, here in Michigan. 2 stories in the last 10 days about messages in a bottle discovered by people after 100 years afloat.
Really?
Isn't that awesome? I love that stuff. I do. Usually it's an archaeological find. Plenty of you have sent me this other species of man, perhaps, that's a great story. Good stuff. Incredible, the stuff we're finding out, including the documents being released from our own government about UFOs. Now, I'm not the person that reads that story and then goes, there's aliens. No, they're just unidentified flying objects. Yeah, but I'm not saying there isn't either. I'm just saying I don't know. It's fascinating. I like to read those things, but they're not as interesting to me as the concrete evidence you have of certain species existing or ways people were found to have died and, let's say, a volcanic eruption or whatever it might be, like Mount Vesuvius. All that stuff interests me. But 2 messages in a bottle, I think one of them was almost 200 years old, which is insane. But neither of the messages were all that cool. I'm always thinking, I want the message in a bottle to be found from the guy that was on a deserted island. I want that message. Well, unfortunately for him, 80 years after he's dead. But I always want that message to be found where somebody goes, oh, look at this. Craig is on an island and he's really in trouble. Look what he wrote here. But it's usually something like, I'm so-and-so. I live in Sheboygan and I threw this bottle in the Great Lakes. It's 1925, and you're like, if you find it, please return it to such and such, such and such. That's actually kind of what happened with one of them. And this part is cool. This guy, it was 1925, I think it was, that he threw this in Lake Erie. And a woman was diving and saw this old-looking green bottle and thought, what's that doing here on the floor? Brought it to the surface, opened it up, saw there was a note inside. They were able to dry it out. You know how they dry it out? They freeze it. And they freeze it. So they froze it, and they were able to extricate the note, and then they read on there the person's name. They could see it clearly. And in addition to the person's name that they could see clearly, the guy, I think he was 17 years old at the time, wrote it and wrote his address, right? So the person who found it posted a note saying that we found this. We don't know, is this, obviously the person's not still alive. It was 1925. But the daughter was. And the daughter, that was her father. and they were able to return this, and she saw his handwriting for the first time in however long, and she was, it was very touching. Seems like something my dad would do, as she said, and who he was and his personality. Just so you know, go find those. Fun stuff. Weird Anecdote. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
I only end up giving bad directions that never lead them there at all. It's something written in the headlights. It's something swimming in my drink. And if I were the
It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, but I saw where joining our StockRisers.com family are the following college athletes, each of which will provide a weekly blog series during the season. That includes FSU's Matthew Cleveland, as well as FSU's Cameron Fletcher. And that is interesting. People are very quick to respond to this about what it's going to mean for the game, what it won't mean for the game, the ruination of college athletics, and or about damn time we got to a place where in a sport in which Dabo Swinney signs a $93 million contract and complains that players, if ever paid, he'd walk away. Really? So you're not walking away? Didn't think so, ass. Yeah, there's plenty of time to have this discussion and to see what will happen. But should be noted, there are guys already here at Florida State that are going to have opportunities. Good for them. I know of something that I'm not at liberty to speak about right now in terms of a specific player on the football team that stands to do okay here. We're not talking about gobs of money. We're not talking about the exchange of hundreds of thousands of dollars, but wonderful opportunities to perhaps cash in on name, image, likeness for this particular player, who I think would be a great representative for Florida State. And I think one of the cool things that's possible with all of this now is, for the purposes of the show, and to use an example, if in fact this radio station hadn't been sold, we could have, as a wildly popular show, the Jeff Cameron Show, had a relationship with a player of some sort, basketball, baseball, football, you name it. I don't know, name a guy, Mackenzie Milton. And he could come on and be paid for it, or in exchange for whatever, I don't know, food, whatever it might be, come on and give us a weekly report. He could come on the show and he could say, it's part of a 15-minute deal, and we pay him whatever we pay him, whatever we agree to, and he comes on and gives us a lowdown as his perspective of the game on Saturday. I think it's invaluable for context and insight. It would be great. And I think things like that, and I use that as an example, things like that are 100% going to happen. I already know of plenty of deals that are in place for athletes to do that very thing. Fantastic. Fantastic for us as fans of the sport and following the sport and wanting to know more about and glean insight from what's going on, why certain things were done the way that they were, what the quarterback saw, what defenses were trying to do to us, all that stuff. That's fun. That'll be interesting. It's a lot more complicated, and it's not something I'm diving into just yet. But, it's interesting to read, for example, I saw a tweet from Jerry DePaula. Kenny Pickett said when he woke up for workouts this morning, there were already some NIL opportunities presented to him. And then I read the next tweet, which was, about the Stock Risers and that website. Then I read the next tweet, which was about a player joining certain shows to do a weekly hit. And they're represented by whomever. Then I read this tweet, and it made me smile. With every NCAA athlete in the country able to make money from endorsements, who should grace the cover if the game comes back. NCAA football 2022. Let's go. Let's go. That's all anybody cares about. Can we get back to this, please? I can't wait to do as I've always done, which is take on the worst program on the game. Coach Cameron comes in. We're turning this thing around, people. We are turning this thing around at UTEP. We are tired of out here taking ass kickings every week. We're going to make some alterations to the uniform. That's where we're going to start, okay? First thing I'm going to do. I know you pictured something more substantive. I'm not that guy just yet. We got to become more uniformed across the board for socks. Linemen, here's how we're wearing socks and tape on our cleats. That's for you on the offensive and defensive lines. Linebackers, only the middle linebacker can have the black shield, the visor over their eyes. In fact, you're required to wear the black visor over your eyes if you play middle linebacker for me. Cannot wear tape around the ankles. However, elbow braces, we're adding those to your look, okay? Along with a neck brace. We're going to go old school 80s neck brace, visor. You're going to look like a jacked up lunatic. Wide receivers, no gloves. No gloves here at UTEP as Coach Cameron takes over. We're barehanded everything. Go make those catches. Also, depending on what part of the country we're in, whatever fledgling program I take over on NCAA football, I decide whether to take a look to make us look slower or faster. If we're slow, untalented, I want a look that makes us look sleeker. So we're going to do everything in our power from the dress perspective to make us look faster. If you're already abundantly fast, one of the faster teams, then I want to make you look slower. We want to be deceptive. I'm going to put the black tape around your ankles. It's going to make you look slower at Penn State, even though you might be fast. We're going to grow the grass. We're doing a lot of things here, guys. But once we get on the same page for the look, now we can excel. And I'm going to aggressively recruit. I might even cheat. Take some chances. That's that game in a nutshell, though, isn't it? You do all of these things. It's hilarious. I do similar things in MLB The Show. It's ridiculous. What a kid I am. When I get that game going and I go through and change all of the walk-up music for every player. I go through and I change certain looks with the high socks for some guys, no socks for other guys. The long pants for some guys. I change their bats. I change their gloves. I change their shades and their face paint. I try to get it as close to possible. If Adam Frazier looks a certain way, I need him to look that way. In the game, sometimes screws it up. So I go in there and fix that.
I haven't figured out how to make Bryce Harper flip his helmet off whenever he runs the bases yet, but I'm trying.
You're trying to figure that out? Like when he rounds first to go for second, he's got to do the almost supermodel thing as the helmet flies off and the hair flies in the wind. Yeah, man, I'm not going to lie. One of the first things I thought of was, well, this has to clear the way. We're set. Let's go. Stop dilly-dallying. No more pussyfooting. Let's go, NCAA football. EA, get off your ass. We've been waiting forever on this thing. Simply fantastic. No doubt there will be hiccups along the way, though. On a serious note, with the NIL, I do think there will be some unintended consequences. But I also think there will be less disastrous consequences than people seem to think. I've seen a whole lot of clutching of the pearls. That was to be expected. People have – this is a more sophisticated issue than just athletes getting paid. There's a social element to this that can't be overlooked and that make people uncomfortable when talked about. Also, it should be noted, I think, just being pragmatic, not many guys are going to make a lot of money off this. That's the other thing that should be talked about. 99% of the guys that play college football are of no use to companies. They're not going to gain anything by associating themselves with them. There aren't enough difference makers in college football that have the kind of influence that companies are looking for, whose Instagram accounts or Twitter accounts could change the fortunes of not too many. Not too many. There are some, though. There are some, without question. You know, if you're a unique player in a on a big time, for a big time program, you're a Heisman candidate and you've got some flair to you, you're polarizing or whatever, you've got something, transcendent talent, something like that. Yeah, you can do it. You're the right guard at Ohio State? No, man. That ain't going to do anything. You're a middle linebacker for TCU? Good luck. Good luck. People aren't calling. They're not knocking down your doors. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Art and love so strange, said you never know. While I try my best, they cover eyes. It's a common way to blame and hide the truth.
I asked yesterday, and it was rather unfair of me to do so because I didn't give Matthew a heads up before I just threw it out there somewhat non-rhetorically to find out what those numbers were since baseball decided to crack down on the sticky stuff, and we couldn't find it. And I was giving anecdotal evidence of just watching the games. I've watched a ton of baseball lately. Seems to me the ball's put in play more often. Seems to me that just, again, anecdotally watching the games, that scoring was up, that batting averages team batting averages would be higher, hard hit percentage, all that stuff. Yeah, well, yesterday was baseball's highest scoring day of the season, and it was by a lot. So you go back to June the 3rd, almost a month ago now, when Major League Baseball announced that it would crack down on the substances used by pitchers in order to get a better grip on the baseball and create, quite frankly, these spin rates that made it almost impossible to consistently hit the ball hard or even hit the ball, period. So if you take June 3rd and the announcement that baseball will be making drastic changes and will be checking in on guys as they leave the mound, etc. And June 21st, when they actually began the process, where they enforced the rule, okay? So there was an 18-day period there. What they were trying to do was tell pitchers, like, start working on this, guys, because we're going to start checking, and you need to know how to throw a baseball without cheating. Now, here's the thing. Again, want to reiterate something. Baseball shoots itself in the foot all the time. This was a rule that was already on the books. Go back to when the spitball was banned, like 100 years ago. Quite literally. When baseball first started, guys put anything they could on the ball. There was no rule against it. That's how the rule came about, where guys were rubbing the baseballs with all kinds of stuff. Spitballs they were born out of the trickeration and the cheating that went on from baseball's pitchers in the earliest days of the game. And at some point along the way, it became too much. And so baseball stepped in and went, guys, we got to stop this. You can't just be putting all kinds of substances on the ball. You're going to have to just pitch the ball as it is. We'll do something to help out with the texture so that you can hold it. And they made these rules, but then they didn't enforce these rules, and things got more and more high-tech, more and more chemicals, and therefore different products became usable, whether it was suntan lotion or rosin mixed with sweat and suntan lotion and soda and all this other stuff that help gunk it up. But baseball didn't do anything about it until we got to a breaking point, a tipping point, where all of a sudden nobody could hit. Nobody could hit. And baseball knew from their own studies and from the pitchers themselves, saying, look, you got to know what's going on out there. And I think this is fascinating. Baseball, it's so weird to me that pitchers who were given an inch and took a mile and ended up creating a way in which hitters simply couldn't compete, all right? We, from a distance, thought, and this, usually it's a confluence of events, We thought, well, it's because everybody throws 100 now. And in yesteryear, one or two guys threw 100. And when you saw them, you were in awe of them. They were Nolan Ryan. And then, Aroldis Chapman. And every now and then just somebody came around and you'd be like, what? This guy throws 100? Who throws 100? Everybody. Everybody in everybody's bullpen throws 100 now. So we assumed we're going to have to move the mound back. We're going to have to do something because everybody comes in firing 102 miles per hour, and guys just can't hit it. Plus, you had the shift. Plus, bullpens were being overused. Guys figured out that you really didn't need starting pitchers anymore. You can roll a guy out there for an inning or two and then just go to your bullpen and play matchup baseball for the next 6 hours because that's how long it was going to take, and everybody came in firing 100, and I could play lefty-lefty, righty-righty. I could do this all day with you. Baseball rightfully went, no, okay, we're going to stop that. You got to face three guys unless you conclude the inning. You're going to have to come in. And that's been good for baseball. I saw it firsthand again yesterday. Pirates brought in a lefty to face a lefty. Needed to get that out, okay? He gave up a base hit. Problem is, next two guys are righties. Can't pull my lefty. My specialist didn't get the lefty out. That's who he's supposed to get out so we can end the inning and change pitchers. But he didn't. Now we got a problem on our hands. Well, what does that do? It creates more offense. We want more offense. We want the balls put in play. We want to see these magnificent guys on defense range beyond ways we ever thought imaginable, making throws and catches that really highlight their athleticism and elevate the sport. Well, that has worked. That rule was a good rule. I think you could move to banning the shift. I think you can get to a place where you'll get the desired effect. But the final thing was to create a way that these guys cannot produce spin rate at the numbers we were seeing. And that was to remove the sticky stuff. But they should have done this in the offseason because you have got to give guys time to adjust to a world in which they can't utilize these chemicals to create the grips that they're accustomed to. They've learned how to pitch this way because baseball ignored their own rules. They didn't enforce them. It is unreasonable in many cases to then in midseason say, can't do that anymore, guys. It leads to injury. It's also dangerous for hitters. I get that in spirit and overall, it is the right thing to do. You do have to eliminate this aspect of the game. It will help put more balls in play. It will lead to higher scoring games and truer numbers across the board. And we do see there are still plenty of guys that can straight deal without all that stuff. See Jacob deGrom. Good Christ. See Max Scherzer, for that matter, and others saying, no, man, I'm good. I've only ever needed, some of them have pointed out, Trevor Bauer, who's in the news for a different reason, and I got thoughts on that and gave him a little bit earlier in the show. But the point would be, he's a sweat and rosin guy. He's like, look, man, all I've ever needed is sweat and rosin. Gave a demonstration of just how effective sweat and rosin can be. Held his hand out, sprawled his hand out as far as he could, and put the baseball in the palm of his hand and held it up to the camera, showing you that with just sweat and rosin, you can grip a ball that way. Still, though, a lot of guys, having figured out a way to pitch using that stuff, now have to utilize other muscles in their forearm, and they're getting hurt because they want a better grip on the ball. They don't have the stuff that. I'm not saying boo-hoo. I am saying that it stands to reason if you're having to make a change on the fly, there are going to be problems. Also, you haven't really educated the umpires exactly what they're looking for. And it may very well be that the first guy to ever get tossed out of a baseball game for the alleged sticky stuff did nothing wrong. And that's a real bad look. To have a guy get kicked out of a game, he's a journeyman nothing bum of a pitcher. By the way, he was already being pulled from the game because he was ineffective. He didn't get the guy he was supposed to get. They ended up pulling him, but before you left the field, he left the field, and that's true of any pitcher when they leave the field. They get checked by the umpires. The umpires felt around in the glove. They said, this is sticky. He said, yeah, that's what sweat and rosin does. They said, no, you're out of the game. All right, so now what happens if they test that glove and there's nothing in it? So you're mismanaging the situation. You've suspended this guy for nothing. And by the way, the rules read as this. If you're found to have used, in the minds of the umpires, sticky stuff, for lack of a better term, illegal substances to get a better grip on the ball, and you're kicked out, because that is a rule, meaning an existing rule that has been on the books and never enforced, it's already collectively bargained, so you have no recourse. The players union can't come to your defense. You can call the players union and say, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I had rosin and sweat, and they said I did this. And the baseball's players union can't do anything for you. And if MLB just decides, nope, don't believe you, you're screwed. Not a good look. Creates the acrimony we're trying to avoid so that we have long-term deals in place to continue to play baseball, not strikes or lockouts. These are all things that are unintended consequences of probably trying to do the right thing and get a handle on what is a difficult thing for baseball to get a handle on, but also something necessary to better the game. This is a very long-winded way for me to tell you that we were right. Here are the numbers. 2 lines of demarcation when MLB reported they were going to crack down and when they enforced the rule, June 3rd, June 21st. According to Jeff Passan, April 1st to June 2nd, teams were hitting the league, across the league. Here's the slash line. 236, ouch. 236, 312, 395. That's what you got. That's wildly ineffective. That's not a lot of punch. If that were your right fielder, you want him euthanized. June the 3rd, we see a jump of 11 points in batting average. 11 is significant. When you go from 236 collectively to 247 in just 18 days, small sample size but trending upward in a hurry, and a more respectable slash line, 247, 317, 417. Getting there. Now it has started to level off. Still the same batting average up to 326 and 414. So we're getting there. So 2 of the top 4 within the last 3 days in terms of highest scoring days for the MLB season in total runs per game. Go back to where we were earlier in May. You've got total runs in games averaging 11, and you get all the way up to 13.6 now. That's a jump. It's working. The foreign substances ban is working. Guys having to operate without it, it is working. Spin rates, they have those numbers too now. If you follow the TrackMan and you look at these numbers, it's changed. I mean, it's eye-popping how much less spin pitchers are able to put on the ball. And that is going to lead to much harder hit balls, more consistently hit balls, and you're not going to see these insane video game-like movements on a baseball. I mean, there have been times this year when you watched replays, you went, well, what? Who can do that? That doesn't seem physically possible. Well, it wasn't, not without the aid of a foreign substance. So this is going to work out, but you've got people who are embittered. You've got people who are angry about the way baseball is implementing it. And I have to say, if you just go back to the Max Scherzer example, man, look, man, you can't have a clown show of a manager embarrassing a pitcher and you've got umpires smelling his hair. I mean, what are we doing? Girardi afterwards in the press conference is like, well, I've been around Max Scherzer a lot, and I've watched him pitch for years. I've never seen him run his hands through his hair like that. What are we doing? What are we doing, Joe? That was a weird thing. And you got to have some uniformity to this. You got to have umpires knowing what they're looking for, when there's probable cause, how often are you to check, how do you check, what is it specifically you're looking for, what are we testing, when can you throw a guy out, all that stuff. There doesn't seem to be that, and so it does seem a little wonky. And when that's the case, people are going to push back. You've had guys dropping trowel on the mound. They literally did. They're just dropping their pants because they're so fed up. It's especially bad when you get a guy who gives up a 3-run dong, blows the lead for his team, is disgusted, gets the next batter out, is walking off the field, and he has to be tested, and he's a little annoyed already because had he been using the stuff, he might not have given up the 3-run homer, and he's pissed off, and the umps are like, yeah, let me look. And, oh, you want to look? And they just drop their pants because they're pissed, and that's happened twice. Chef Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
She's a cat.